feeling like I'm academics. Can't ride no wave.
Holy. All right, back to back like Lethal Weapon. All right, come on, let's get it. Yo, chat, what's cracking? What's cracking? I didn't even do no intro today. We're going to get right into it. Cassandra Ventura has taken a stand. This is day 2 officially of the trial being started. We anticipate that she's probably going to be up on the stand for a little bit, for more than one day. But they did finish. My bad. They finished up with Flores. No, actually, the sex worker, Philip. They finished up with him this morning, and Cassie has officially taken a stand. It's the first time she's actually appeared, and we're going to get right into it, people. This is Cassie on the stand. So, actually, let's pull up, and we'll get the details about, okay, so this is going to be day 2. We'll get the details that what Philip said, and we're going to roll right into the Cassie testimony. She's going to testify until lunch, so she has about an hour. She's on the stand right now. She's going to testify at least until lunch. Check this out, though, okay? All right, bet. So, this is this morning, so 2 hours ago, right? Judge Submaranium, basically, he's like, yo, we're going to try to get through these issues effectively. So usually at the beginning of these cases, like even if they have witnesses on the stand, they'll try to get through anything that's raised at the end of the day or any motions that are raised that they could get those out of the way that they could carry on the trial. So basically he says we're going to get through these issues efficiently as the jurors are, and as we have the jurors waiting. We have a letter from a juror that will make court exhibit 1. On the videos, so a juror wrote a letter. What the fuck? It says on the videos, when will they be offered into evidence? And AUSA Johnson said this afternoon. So something is happening with the witness. By the way, yesterday, just to catch you guys up, very big, important development. And I'm seeing different outlets. And this is why it's so important that we actually, I really wish there was cameras or audio, because the fine details do matter in a trial to this magnitude, where it's all about perception. Did they want it? Did they consent? Did they ask for it? Like, for example, this idea of Cassie getting pee in her mouth. It's supposedly mentioned that Cassie requested that. So Cassie asked the sex worker, hey, have you ever done that? We could look at, different outlets reported it a little bit different. Some people said, did he force her? But then somebody who was there, they said, the person on the stand, the sex worker said, Cassie was the one who asked me to urinate on her. She asked me if I ever done that, and she told me to do it. Apparently, I was doing it wrong because they both told me. So it looked like Diddy maybe have been supervising, but Cassie's the one who solicited the pee, okay? Now, again, that's going to be a source of contention this whole time. Did Diddy force her to get piss in her mouth and pee on her, or did Cassie want it and Diddy was just supervising or pleasuring himself watching? We'll figure this out. We don't have to think about it too much longer because Cassie's about to hit the stand. So anyway, all right, cool. So they have a letter from the juror. So there's some type of situation going on. Don't know why a juror would be writing a letter, but it's going to be court exhibit 1, and they're claiming that on the videos will they be offered into evidence. Now, this is another thing they're trying to figure out. They're trying to figure out, will they allow the press and also other people who are what they call interested parties that are in the court to see the porn? Will they be able to see the free call videos? So the judge is kind of mulling it over. Right now, they're leaning towards, yo, just play them motherfuckers. Whoever is here, let them see. This is a public case, even though it's not recorded, audio or visual, but let these motherfuckers see it. The judge then says, this is about evidence that's coming into the case. The public has a right to know what's happening in the trial. I don't see how we could navigate that concern. There's a potential impact on the jurors of signaling some evidence requiring sealing. Interesting. The AUSA Johnson said we wouldn't just show the videos in the courtroom gallery, and the jurors and everyone else would wear headphones. So all the little moans and everything, I guess they're saying, rather than just like play the porn, they're saying that we'll give the jurors headphones. So these materials are sexually explicit and involve nudity. So one has submitted a letter. I don't know if we can see the letter. Oh yeah, I think it was submitted in the docket. So yeah, so I'll put it up on the side. Diddy's lawyer says this is adult pornography. That's what it is. So it's narrowly tailored. Our application is only that the visual images and the audio is within the ambit of the sealing order. We could ask questions tastefully. He also then says, what would New York Times or Wall Street Journal do with this? No, they're not the only press. He says sometimes things get unsealed and published, okay? And he actually cites two different things, which is Eric Adams. What is this? Yeah, okay, cool. The judge says on the 2 incidents with Miss Ventura, so there's at least 2 videos with her. When we discussed this last week, the defense then chimes in and says the assault in Connecticut, messages between Miss Ventura and Combs, it's relevant. The judge says, let's see if there's any issue. AUSA Johnson says it should be excluded. So they're trying to get something with Cassie not be brought up when Cassie takes a stand. Remember, this is pre-motions because Cassie's touching the stage today. She's actually already on the stand. Tenny Garrigo says he suspected she was cheating on him. So they're saying, hey, if y'all gonna show her getting her ass whipped, we're not defending it, but we want to give some context. He thought she was cheating on him. She ain't answering the phone. She got into a bar fight, tried to kill someone. So it's relevant to his suspicions and her substance abuse outside of their sexual relationship. So they might want to get into what type of drugs she was on and that she probably indulged in during the relationship, even when she wasn't with him, to probably show, hey, y'all could say Diddy drugged her, but this chick was a crackhead regardless. She was taking all type of drugs even when she wasn't with him. Tenny then says she was taking drugs while close with her family in another state. So that goes again to prove my point. I overruled the government's objections, so the judge decided with Diddy. This can be asked about. So they're going to be able to ask about her drug history or conduct, even if it doesn't have to necessarily do with Diddy, just to establish a pattern of how Cassie get down. You could tell Diddy's lawyers are trying to set this up. Cassie's a freak. She's a freak of the week. You feel what I'm saying? She's a freak when she with Diddy, when she ain't with, even when she ain't with him either, right? Cool. So now prior consistent statements. We're talking about a sequencing issue. Are they on direct or in rebuttal? Then AUSA Johnson says in their opening, they said Ms. Ventura made her own choices. Okay? They ask who really had control in this relationship. Begging the answer that it was Ms. Ventura, Exhibit B 3 and 5, the threat to release a sex tape, they said that she only had. So they're saying that Diddy must have threatened her with releasing a sex tape, and she's the only one who had a sex tape, right? Cool. Shapiro, which is, again, I think we talked about her before. She is the appellate, lawyer for Diddy, the appellate specialist. She's still a lawyer, but that's her role on the team. She's saying, we're going to submit that these are hearsay until redirect. The judge says if they come in, they're in. You don't object. Shapiro says we do. What we said in open was that Mr. Combs, and the judge then says, you seem to say she was lying about threats to release videos. So look like the prosecutor said, we got threats from the opposite, from Diddy to Cassie about releasing some sexually explicit videos if she didn't comply, right? According to what Diddy said, or Diddy's team in opening, right? So Mark Agnafilio, they said that there were never no threats, and all the videos that were going to be used in the case, only Cassie had a copy, but clearly the governments are probably going to show that, yo, nigga, we found some shit that you had. You still had videos of Cassie, so what are you talking about, right? So Shapiro then says the predicate for prior consent statements has not been met. Judge says, I find that it has for this exhibit. The defense opening said there will be millions of reasons for people to testify here. That's the attack that was used. As to B3162, the judge then says, but the standard has not been reached to B332 and B339. Okay, get Mr. Phillip in the witness box. So they're going to finish up with this witness. That's the sex worker, and bring in the jury. All rise. Everybody's sworn in. Cool. Then we get this guy who we keep seeing his name, Xavier Donaldson. He seems to be the specialist. And what I'm thinking Diddy's case is that they have 9 lawyers. It was supposed to be 8, but it's 9. And I think what they're doing is that they're specializing a few people for a few things. Like, for example, Brian Steele looked like he took the part of whenever that video comes in, the 2016 hallway beatdown, Brian Steele is going to be dissecting whoever testifies to that to make sure they get that out. This Donaldson dude looked like his expertise, no Diddy, is sex workers. So like, all right, you bring up this guy who said he was slanging cock for money, he's going to ask the question. I think he's done a decent job. I think Brian Steele did a slightly better job, but he probably had an easier job with the worker. Here we go. Okay, cool. So he said, so to continue. So now the sex worker's back on the stand. They're going to continue. By the way, we're going to get to Cassie very shortly. So to continue, you return to Gramercy Hotel. The male dancer, Phillip, says yes. Donaldson then says, so while you and Miss Cassie Ventura were having sex for hours, Miss Ventura took the lead. Phillips said no. Donaldson says, did you take the lead? Phillips says, we were equally doing our thing. There wasn't a leader. So they're kind of describing the sex that supposedly we're probably going to see, okay? Donaldson says, you decided that together. Phillips says, yes. So they're also asking who took the lead, who's deciding, to kind of establish a pattern of, did this seem consensual, right? Donaldson says, fair to say she was in complete control of everything she was doing, right? Phillips says, I can't really say that. Donaldson says, wait, you didn't wear a condom, did you? He says, I did not. Donaldson says, did your boss told you that Cassie paid for the hotel? Phillips says, yes. Donaldson then says she paid with her credit card. Then Phillips says, yo, I have nothing to do with that. She used her card to pay for the dancer. Donaldson then says, okay, that assault at her apartment on 11th Avenue. Phillips says, I believe that was on West End Avenue, which I think that's Cassie's apartment. Donaldson then says, you claim Mr. Combs told her to come over. She said she had personal information on her computer, so wait a minute. And he threw a water bottle at her. So this got a little bit muddied last time in the whole mix chat. The conversation that was being had was that this sex worker claims he couldn't get hard anymore to fuck Cassie, and he had to stop fucking Cassie because he would witness abuse. He said sometimes he would come there to fuck Cassie. He would hear in another room Diddy beating the shit out of Cassie, and he said that turned him off, and he couldn't perform. He said Diddy was, these are details we didn't really get yesterday. So I watched a few other streams while I was off stream to kind of, parse through some information that slipped through the cracks. Also, apparently, Diddy used to press this dude, because he said one time he's fucking Cassie. He claims he's a little bit traumatized by how he's talking to her and the whole situation, but he's fucking her. He can't nut. And he says, he's trying to kind of end it. So he fake nuts. So he's like, I nutted, right? And Diddy's there like, nigga, you sure? Like Diddy's almost trying to like confirm. And Diddy looks at Cassie and says to Cassie like, yo, you sure he nutted in you? Because Diddy instructions was for him to nut in Cassie. You get what I'm saying? So crazy shit, right? Like beyond crazy. All right. It says, isn't it true Mr. Combs told you, yo, man, I'm going to have to deal with this and you need to get the fuck out. So, okay. And then the person said, that's not correct. I'm wondering, what's this about? Wait, let me go back. You claim Mr. Combs told her to come over. She said she had personal information on the computer. So wait a minute. And he threw a bottle at her? Okay, so there was a time where I guess he threw a bottle at her. Isn't it true Mr. Combs told you, yo, man, I'm going to have to deal with this. You need to get the fuck out. Bill Dare says, that's not correct. Donaldson says, in 2023, didn't you tell the prosecutors, yo, man? So I guess they're reading from his, I guess in discovery, the defense got his interrogation or recorded statement with the prosecutor where he detailed what supposedly happened. So now they're trying to use that while he's on the stand to kind of show if he's lying, changing the story, embellishing. You got to try to get these guys' reputation really down low that you could make sure, whatever point you're trying to make that these guys are liars or not remembering the story how it went kind of flies with the jury. So you're trying to point out this person pretty much lying or bending the truth. Cool. All right. AUSA objected. It says not in evidence, right? The judge then says sustained. He said you could only use it to try to refresh his recollection. So we've seen this a lot, chat. A lot of times they won't bring in evidence a interrogation video or a recorded statement with law enforcement unless they'll refer to it. But usually we see it in the YSL case. You could only introduce it. And we've seen it in the YNW Melly case. They did that a lot. Remember the lady was on the stand? The mom of the girlfriend, she kept playing dumb. She was like, I don't remember. And that was the only time they could use her statements prior to say, hey, okay, well, we have the transcript here. Could you read what you said? And that's how you kind of get them to admit, because people will catch selective amnesia when they get on the stand, right? Obviously, and by the way, that's the best way. If, say, somebody's on the stand, they're not trying to perjure themselves would be lying. So, you know what they do? Oh, I don't recall. I don't recall. Oh, I don't recall. Well, all right, you've said this before, so let's get your recollection up to date. So the judge is saying you can't use the statements as evidence, Okay? You can't use it as evidence unless you're trying to refresh their memory, all right? Cool. Donaldson says, did you date a model named Malia? The male prostitute says, yeah, Malia. And I didn't say I dated her. We were friends. Donaldson says, well, you were with her and you saw Cassie with someone, not Mr. Combs. He says, yes. Well, that's an interesting thing. You were with her and saw Cassie. Oh, okay. Ooh. So supposedly I'm guessing he's on a date with his girl. He runs into Cassie. Cassie's with another man. Okay? So he says, yes, I saw Cassie. She wasn't with Combs. He says, you told Malia you saw Cassie socially. He says, yes. Donaldson then says, you thought Cassie wanted to see you one-on-one, right? Nothing to do with Mr. Combs, right? And then Philip says, I don't see what you mean. Now, I get what he means. He's saying, did you and Cassandra Ventura develop your own relationship where y'all wanted to fuck outside of the watchful eyes of Diddy? And you know what that's kind of proven, right, chat? That's proven, well, if y'all want to fuck outside of Diddy watching y'all have some other shit going on. And also, it shows that Cassie is consensual, and without the either consent or the direction of Diddy, she wants to continue these relationships or do these things, right? Cool. It says, I don't see what you mean. It says, in front of the Dream Hotel, that's what you thought. Dude says, no. Donaldson then says, you only saw her inebriated one time? He says, well, I seen her passed out on the couch. Mr. Combs told me, I don't think it's going to happen today. Donaldson then says, that the time with the other male, you rotated. So I guess we talked about it yesterday. He came in. There was supposedly another guy that may have came in before. There was lube that was used already. So they're asking, did you rotate or did y'all switch? He says, no, not correct. Donaldson says, well, did you watch? He says, yes. So he was watching another sex worker have sex with Cassie. Donaldson then says, you thought you were in a relationship with Cassie, didn't you? The sex worker says, no, I didn't. Donaldson then says, you wanted to get alone with her, to date her. Philip then says, well, if she would have let me, I would have. And then Donaldson then says, did you get jealous of Diddy? He says, no. Now, this is a really interesting line. What they're kind of doing, and I think Donaldson's starting to do a better job of this, he's trying to paint this sex worker as someone who developed feelings for Cassie. Now, why is this relevant? Well, if this is a government's witness, this is a federal government's witness, he's trying to testify to the fact that, or testify to the allegation that Cassie didn't want to do this, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you come in to slang dick, you start falling in love with her, you want to get him out of the picture. You want to get him out of the picture by any means necessary, right? So maybe you fell in love with her. Now, maybe that turns into later on you willing to testify and say a version of the story that makes him look like a monster rather than what they claim it is, which is everybody was consensual and willing participants. Okay? Cool. All right. It says, did you not tell them that Mr. Combs would tell you, it's my turn? Oh, shit. Skip Bayless. Holy shit. It's my turn. Nah, that's my shit. Oh, nah. Imagine Diddy in the freak off room like
my
this.
My turn.
Yes.
You told me it was my turn. My turn. You told me it was my turn.
You can talk all that you want to, yell and scream. You lost.
It is my turn.
You lost the game.
It's my turn.
Yo, no way Diddy up in there.
My turn. You told me it was my turn.
You can talk all that you want to, yell and scream. You lost.
It is my turn.
Lost.
Okay. Now, let's go back. It said, did you not tell him that Mr. Combs would tell you my turn? All right. Then AUSA says, objection, can we have a sidebar? Donaldson says, I guess they go up real quick. They talk. They back to the desk. Donaldson's continuing. So didn't you tell the government that you would feel jealous because you actually liked Cassie romantically? Philip says, I don't recall that. It says, you don't remember that shit? You know you don't fucked up, right? Yo, put that up on the screen. So they put up, I guess, part of the either his testimony or something like that. Not testimony, but his interview with the feds whenever they interviewed him. And it said, put up 3570, whatever that is. And AUSA says, just for the parties. And Philip says, I don't recall that. So I think this is a good ending, and they end the cross-examination of Philip right there. I think this is good for Diddy because guess what just happened? You basically just proved that this guy might be a little bit untrustworthy because he liked Cassie the whole time. Even now, he's not even willing to admit that, he really was fucking with this chick and probably liked her and was down to snake Diddy. So this is gonna be interesting. So AUSA is now coming back on redirect. They gotta clean up what this nigga just dug, right? Pause. So the redirect, AUSA says, yo, please explain why you say Mr. Combs directed you. He said, well, he asked about positions, but Mr. Combs didn't tell us what to do. Use baby oil. Then they say the timing of handing of cash. How much did the amount compare to your stripping services? They say $3,800 more. Then the AUSA says, how much were you paid to perform? When could you, I don't know. And it says $700 to $5,000 or $6,000. It says when you couldn't perform. It says they paid me nothing then. So they're doubling down on this. Hey, this was strictly dick for cash. If I couldn't fuck, I didn't get paid. AUSA says, did Ms. Ventura call you after the Dream Hotel? He says, yes. He says, do you know who she was with? He says, no. He says, did she answer your text messages? He says, never. Well, almost. He says, you said you wanted to hug her. Why? He says, I could see she was afraid. He says, what did you do? He said, I could not engage. I was messed up. He said, what did Mr. Combs say to you? He said, it was time for you to go. He said, in the Gramercy Hotel, who was in the room? He said, Sean Combs, myself, and Cassie. He says, well, when you appeared to enjoy yourself, was Sean Combs always in the room? Yes. So now they're trying to flip it back again to say, oh, look like, I don't know if you guys get that little subtle nuance they're trying to put in there, right? So the AUSA on redirect is kind of almost saying, bro, when Diddy wasn't in the room and you're saying that you wanted to hug her, it's not because you liked her. You felt pity for her. Like, you felt like, yo, she's in distress. And this whole thing about her was enjoying herself and she was loving it. Wasn't she only like that when he was in the room? So they're basically trying to say that she was acting like she was into this shit, right? Okay. It says, was that the same man who called her bitch and beat her? And Philip says, I didn't see the beating, I presume. They then object. That's sustained. It says, did you hear the slapping? He says, yes, I did. And the AUSA says, nothing further. The judge says, recross. Donaldson says briefly. And let's keep it going. It says, this document, did you see where you said, I'm on the Upper West Side? She says 10 West End Ave. Hit me when you get here. Philip says, yes. He says, did you see your text? Don't give a fuck if I'm a little tipsy. I love y'all niggas. Yes. Then he says, was that after the beating? He says, yes. Donaldson says, nothing further. So what they're showing, or what Diddy's, team on, hold on. Sorry. Yeah. So pretty much on recross, what they're trying to show is that despite this brutal beatdown and Cassie's so scared, after he gets kicked out of the room because Diddy was going to beat her ass or whatever the case is, Cassie hits up the dude to fuck. So minutes after, I guess maybe Diddy went home. I don't know what happened. She hits up the dude to fuck, right? And apparently that's why they're having it being read. It says, do you see your text? Don't give a fuck if I'm a little tipsy. I love y'all niggas. So basically, this whole thing where he's saying he's scared for her, he's watching how Diddy's like this controlling, abusive person. You texted her, I love y'all niggas. Basically on some, man, that's how we have fun shit. You get what I'm saying? That's how we have fun. That's what happened. So they plan to link, and I don't know, I guess maybe they did link and fuck, right? Cool. All right, there's another sidebar before the next witness. They did have a sidebar, and the jurors, they then took a break. They had some issues to deal with. They wanted Mr. Ventura's husband not to be allowed in the courtroom during her testimony, right? And this is one of Diddy's lawyers that hasn't been mentioned yet. We're going to Google who she is. This is Ana Maria Estavio, okay? Now, you'd imagine why they don't want Cassie's husband in the room, because as she has to recount some of these details that are not only traumatic but very sexual in nature, it probably will evoke more emotion having to say this in front of her husband, the man who she currently loves and she's building a life with. They don't want her up there sobbing too much. She's probably going to cry, but you don't want her like fucking struggling like snotty. You don't want that. So you're trying to say, could the husband step out? Like, we're trying to, let's get this shit going on. Now, this person, let's see who she is. She handles a variety of high-stake matters involving financial fraud, insurance fraud, money laundering. Okay, wow, this is interesting. None of these things don't really look. None of these things kind of look like anything Diddy's charged with. Weapons offenses, narcotics, immigration, health fraud. Wow, wondering what her thing is on the team. Interesting. But she is on the squad. Let me type in her name with Diddy to see when she got hired. Yeah, give me 1 second. She's a partner, blah, 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 da, da, da. Okay, she's on the appellate side. She joined Shapiro. If she's with Shapiro, she's on the appellate side. No, never mind. It's the wrong Shapiro, sorry. Where does she come from? All right, we'll find out more about her if she continues. All right, cool. So they want Cassie's husband not to be in the room, right? And so we may need to call him as a witness, and they come up with a good excuse, right? We may need to call him as a witness later, depending on the direct. And then Johnson says, "I'm not sure how Mr. Fine's testimony would be relevant." The judge says, "Tenny or Miss Garagos." Tenny says, "Give me 15 seconds," and he says, "If he wants to come in the courtroom today." If he wants to come in to the courtroom today, but we ask he may be excluded when the testimony gets into post-2018. Okay? I don't know what the agreement is with that. Well, AUSA Johnson says in my initial examination, I will ask about post-2018, but only about devices. By the way, I think in 2018 their relationship ended, right? Garagos, judge says Garagos. Tenny says that's okay. All right, so we'll be back in a couple minutes. Now we get Cassandra Ventura. She's going to take the stand. This is the